On this episode of AV Week, supporting women for International Women's Day, what we can do as an industry to support women in AV, new design services that help you check your specs and check your designs, whether you're a consultant or an in-house integration firm, 8K for live sports in the AV industry. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 446, recorded Friday, March 6th, 2020. No jerks allowed.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, Sound Extraordinary,
and by
Peerless AV, driving technology through innovation,
and by
Atlona, the go-to provider for AV signal distribution and control in corporate, higher education, and residential spaces.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, the industry icon extraordinaire, the elder statesman, and one of my lovely mentors, Mr. Brock McGinnis from AVWeek. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim. How are you?
I am well. If you are not watching the video, Mr. McGinnis is in the throngs of the Canadian wilderness, utilizing Zoom's fantastic auto green screen feature. So it's fantastic. All right, Mr. Joel Carroll also joins us, my buddy from Atlanta, who is working with Immersive now. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Good to be here. Good to see you.
Absolutely. And last but not least, a new guy, so you two be nice to him. Dana Corey from AVWeek. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's kick this off. First thing we're going to start with is actually 8K, and don't throw things at me. And don't yell at me or virtually, or you can email me if you want, tim@avnation.tv, and tell me I'm crazy. But here's the thing. We are getting into the era of 8K, as much as folks will deny that or say, no, we're not, or where's the transport. The other common pushback against 8K is where's the content? This story answers that very question. Our friends over at AV Magazine, Samsung and BT Sport achieved the UK's first 8K content creation. It was Arsenal versus Olympiacos, UEFA European League match for the QLED 8K TVs. What happened was, it was the UK's very first 8K sports was outdoor broadcast setup. Brock, I'm going to start with you on this. We have been following, I'm going to say for 6 years, and I may be off on that a little bit, but we've been following the Japanese broadcasting companies move to 8K ahead of the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. This is the first time I've really seen anybody outside of Japan make a play and make a good case for 8K in not just in general, right? Because folks are shooting on it, they're doing recordings and tapings on it. But this was the first live sporting event outside the Japanese islands that I've seen. Somebody really make a good case for this. Is it something where we have to start taking notice of now as integrators and as an industry?
No.
No? Okay. Good deal. I'm out.
I think maybe that 5 or 6 years ago we had some of the same conversations about 4K.
Yes.
And we whinged about the content, the transport. We whinged about the cameras. We whinged about the costs, and that nobody was ever going to buy it. And I can't think that anybody who is listening to this show today doesn't have a 4K TV. So we're all going to have 8K TVs. It's a wonderful thing. It's a reason for the industry to spend money. We'll all upgrade our switching, we'll upgrade our transport, we'll upgrade our capture, and it's a fantastic thing. And my only comment is it's good they started with soccer, because that sport is so slow. They don't have to worry about frame rate stuff.
Well, they could have started with baseball. That's a slower sport,
Correct.
Or
Correct.
curling,
Correct. But I don't know about you, Tim. I really enjoy hockey in 4K.
I do too. I really do. So speaking
Yeah,
of which, the Blues will be, doing the Winter Challenge, the Winter Classic next year with the Wild. So
yeah, yeah. Tim,
Go
I
ahead,
think
Dana.
if we look at 4K, it's and an 8K too. It's about its ripple effect or significance that affects the overall industry itself. So 8K being popular at larger events and where these visual places are. But as we get to places like where we operate in the corporate meeting rooms, I mean, we're still struggling with HD cameras and 4K TVs, and so we know it's to Brock's point, it's going to come. It's just at what pace and where. And before we hit the panic button on replacing all the panels to 8K, it's really more about like when's it going to hit that particular spot,
Yeah.
So just another perspective around it's important, but when is it important?
Well, that's a good point, though. When is it important? And Joel will bring you on that with that question. Immersive transports, audio and video wirelessly.
Right.
You guys are part of that transport conversation. When is it important, or is it by segment? Is it by the vertical? Because right now we're talking about sports, right?
Right.
We're not talking about corporate yet. Dana made a good point. Some of the integrators are still trying to upgrade their folks to from 720 to full HD, let alone 4K.
I think it starts to become important. Like in this case, what I see, this is starting in the residential world in reality. So kind of starts there. We'll see it populate. I mean, I believe you can buy the 8K if you go to Samsung and you go to Costco and pick it up. For us, when it starts to become, well, you can, right? I mean, you walk in and it's splashy and it's cool.
Hang on, I'm going to check that out to see if I can. What, you keep talking. Hang on.
Of course. But to me, what's unique about it in our world is we are part of transport. I'm in a wireless nature at this point. I don't foresee wireless 8K coming. And I saw something talking about 48 gigabits of data uncompressed. I mean, that was pretty impressive. They're able to do that, right? And it's in a controlled environment. Our computers right now and our devices right now have a hard time doing, let's say, even 4K wireless. That's starting to come out. It's starting to be there. Even in my home, my experience with trying to do it from my phone to Apple TV, it's not been grand, right? And I don't have a lot of devices on my network. So I don't know. I think honestly, at the end of the day, when does it become important? When the customer comes and says to us, we have this and we want to be able to support it and we want to be able to do it. And that's when I feel in our industry, we're going to start seeing that importance. 4K still is just starting to get adopted, I feel, whether it's with what we're doing at Mersive or a lot of the other manufacturers in general. We're just starting getting true adoption of being able to take advantage of the pixels.
Yeah, I have a question for you guys. In the world of visual collaboration or meeting rooms, you guys know there's a direct correlation between distance and resolution sitting. Imagine an 8K display in a room. The fonts are like this small, so now we're back to like enlarging fonts. To what benefit? Where does that trade-off come in? And I'm not an expert on that part of it. It just feels like when I look at 4K displays, I'm doing 150% on the fonts so I can see them, at 8 feet away or 10 feet away. Just a thought too on resolution to viewing, especially as we look at the greater population.
No, I think that's a good point.
Okay, so to that end, and I did look up 8K TVs while Joel was talking. The first thing I'm going to point out is right back to what Dana was saying. You can pick up a 55-inch 8K UHD TV with HDR for $2,500 at let's call it a big box store, not Costco. The Costco one.
Hang on a second, Tim. You just said 8K and UHD.
I'm reading it off the screen.
Yeah,
I'm just reading it off the screen.
So
technically, it's 4320p, which is nowhere near 8K. Okay, so let's start there.
Yes.
At least the Costco one, at least the specs seem a little bit more true. It's an LG 8K, and LG doesn't. It's not. This is a commercial for a Costco or LG, but for $5,000, a 75-inch, again 8K UHD, which is whatever. So you can get an 8K TV, was what they're calling 8K at least. For $5,000 at Costco. Now the resolution for that is at least close, as close as the Samsung, which this resolution is 7680 by 4320. So it is the 8K version of UHD, right? So 4K UHD versus 8K UHD.
As an integrator, I'll comment on when
Yes.
we started putting 4K TVs in.
Okay.
No meeting room needs a 4K TV unless people are in the media and advertising industry. I don't think there's any question about that. But when the manufacturers 4K TVs have all of their best features and all of their best technology, and it is a minuscule price difference between the 4K and the 2K, sell them in 4K, because who doesn't want better, right? Who doesn't want better? And certainly some of the large display sizes, the 75 inches, the 80 somethings, the 90 somethings, they actually benefited from the smoothness of the image in 4K, even with standard business content. So it looked a little bit better, and the contrast was a little bit better. But nobody is going to need 8K for another 3 or 4 years, because this is the cycle that we seem to be running on. The Olympics are a huge driver of video technology, absolutely enormous, because the whole world watches it. And of course, this year there may not be any spectators in the stands, so there'll be even more people on TV, watching the TV. And it's great. Technology continues to advance. That's what employs each and every one of us, and we like it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not familiar, pay attention to some of the advances that happen every 4 years, both from a broadcast standpoint. They really do treat the Olympics as a crown jewel every 4 years, to kind of take some of the things that they've been working on from a broadcast standpoint and take them out for a spin, and then eventually start implementing them.
I was at a Winter Olympics as a guest of Panasonic years and years and years ago, where they were debuting 3D. And they had some of their first 3D camera equipment and some of their first 3D rendering. And by the Summer Olympics 2 years following, 3D was the big gig.
Yeah.
And we all bought TVs that had 3D in them. Not that we ever used it, but because those were the TVs that offered all of the other latest features that those manufacturers offered. And they were only $75 more.
And I will point out that even from a event standpoint, the Beijing Olympics, when they had projection mapping on the field, where they had those scrolls unrolling, was the first time a lot of people, especially the vast majority of the vast audience, saw something like that, right? And I don't know if I'm allowed to say, let's just say it's a projector manufacturer north of me. How about that? In another country other than the United States, that was a part of that, right? And they have since gone on and they've done some really interesting things as well, including being a part of most of the NHL ice projections. So
right. Brock said a comment a minute ago I'd like to go back to, where we don't need that resolution, and I see it slightly different. I like the concept of having that resolution, especially when you're in these more collaborative environments now. The more pixels that you have, the more to post, the more pieces of content you can put up there side by side with good quality. I mean, even I've got a 4K TV that's arm's reach away from me right now, and it looks great. But now if I start putting, 10 different people's pieces of content, which is how a lot of us are now starting to meet, it's going to get to be more and more difficult and see those on that one display, just because of the quality of the pixel. It's going to be silly 4K. It's going to be too big to be able to have a good quality image. So I actually
the discussion then, Joel, becomes about the canvas.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah, and then what can you do with that canvas, and who gets to draw on it? So
I still think that the eye still is the key factor. I get that it's going to be a cleaner picture of the Brady Bunch on the screen, if you will, of all the people, but will I be able to embrace the value of it, because the eye has a limit too at distance. So right. We always want to have that thing with going larger as you go back and getting smaller as you come forward. It's just a fine line that I think resolution. And again, I'm all for it. Just as Brock said, I want to refresh in a couple of years too.
Sure.
Selfish reasons. Yeah. So, but it kind of makes you ponder a little bit. But
thanks so much for watching this first segment of AV Week. To check out the rest of the episode free, click on the link below or go by the website, avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv. I can have Mitchell edit you in if you want. I can just
no, not at all, not at all. You guys keep going. But
or
no.
Dana can mouth it, and then you could say it, and then I can have Mitchell put that in. He's very talented.
Yes, I love
He's
it.
a very talented editor. All right. If you ever meet Mitchell, you'll have to tell him I said. Well, I'm recording now, so.